What if I told you the smartphone sitting next to you right now isn't actually a tool?
I feel like most people would immediately push back on that.
Right. I mean, it sounds crazy, but it is not a hammer. It is not a calculator. And it certainly isn't just a screen you look at. It is functionally a completely new sensory organ.
Oh, absolutely.
And right now, simply by existing in your environment, it is actively rewriting the biological and, well, the psychological limits of your brain.
That is honestly the perfect place to start this deep dive
Yeah.
because we have this incredibly stubborn, comforting illusion that technology is just a passive object.
Yeah, just waiting on the desk for us to pick it up.
Exactly. We think the boundary between human and machine is just absolute. You pick up the tool, you do the job, you put the tool down.
Right. Like, I'm the master, the tool is the servant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you look at how we actually inhabit the digital landscape today, that clear boundary just completely evaporates.
It really does. I mean, we're in an era where the tool doesn't just do the job. It redesigns the hand that holds it and eventually the mind that directs it.
Which represents the total collapse of what the old Enlightenment thinkers used to call instrumental rationality.
Instrumental rationality. Okay, break that down for us.
So that was basically the belief that a tool is entirely neutral. Like a bridge is just a neutral way to cross a river. A telescope is just a neutral way to see a star.
Right. It doesn't change anything about the person using it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But what we are going to explore today shatters that idea completely.
And we are doing that by digging through some really incredible source material today. We've been poring over the archives of Don Ihde.
An absolute brilliant mind.
Truly, he was a brilliant American philosopher who sadly just passed away in early 2024. And he left behind this revolutionary framework called Postphenomenology.
Which I know is a massive, somewhat intimidating word.
It is a mouthful. But our mission today is to really decode his legacy for you. Because understanding postphenomenology is kind of the master key to understanding why your relationship with your devices feels so deeply, almost uncomfortably intimate.
It is incredibly relevant for you listening right now. We are going to unpack how everything from, say, your smartwatch to cutting-edge brain-computer interfaces actually acts as a mediator.
A mediator, right, not a tool.
Right. These aren't objects you use. They are lenses through which your entire reality, your physical body, and the very essence of your humanity are essentially constructed.
So let's get right into the mechanics of this. To really understand Ihde's postphenomenology, we have to look at how we actually interact with the physical stuff around us.
Yeah, he didn't want to talk about technology with a capital T, like some invisible sci-fi force.
Exactly. He wanted to look at mundane, everyday artifacts. And he categorized our relationship with these objects into 4 distinct buckets, or what he called I-world relations.
And this framework is just brilliant because it moves us away from abstract theory and right into the physical mechanics of your daily life.
Right. So what's the first bucket?
The first category is what Ihde calls embodied relations. This happens when a technology becomes so integrated into your physical action that it becomes transparent.
Wait, transparent like invisible?
Yes, exactly. It withdraws from your conscious attention.
Okay, so if I think about my morning routine, putting in my contact lenses, I don't look at my contacts, I look at the world through them.
Precisely. Your brain essentially redraws your body schema to include the plastic lens as part of your own biological eye.
Oh, wow. That makes so much sense.
Right. The technology is incorporated into your literal embodiment. Now, contrast that with his second category, which is hermeneutic relations.
Hermeneutic, that basically just means relating to interpretation.
Exactly. So this is a technology that doesn't become part of your body, but instead it offers a representation of the world that you have to actively read and decode.
Okay, so still thinking about my morning routine, looking at the weather app on my phone.
Perfect example.
Right, because I am not physically stepping outside to feel the humidity or the wind on my skin. I am looking at a digital interface, reading a number like 72 degrees, and an icon of a little sun.
Yes. The app is translating the atmosphere into a language you have to interpret. You are in a relationship with the representation, not the atmosphere itself.
Got it. Okay, what's the third one?
So the third, which is incredibly common today, is alterity relations. This is when the technology stops being a window you look through and instead becomes an entity you actually interact with.
Like it has its own personality?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
It acts as an interlocutor. It has, otherness.
Okay, I know exactly what this is. Like when I get in the car and immediately start arguing with the GPS routing algorithm because it wants me to take the highway and I just know there's traffic.
Yes, you're literally negotiating with a piece of software as if it were a stubborn co-pilot.
I do that way too often.
We all do. The world outside the windshield is temporarily suspended, and your primary relationship is with the machine itself.
That is fascinating. Okay, and the fourth.
Finally, the fourth is background relations. These are the technologies that silently construct the very conditions of your environment without ever demanding your direct attention.
Oh, like the thermostat.
Exactly.
It kicks on at 6 a.m., adjusts the ambient temperature to exactly 68 degrees before I even open my eyes. Or, the router pulsing Wi-Fi through the walls.
Right. You don't interact with it, but it creates the invisible habitat you live inside.
So you take those four relations embodied, hermeneutic, alterity, and background.
And what makes modern devices so completely overwhelming to our nervous systems is that a single device, like your smartphone, does all four simultaneously.
Oh, wow. Let me think about that.
Yeah, I mean, you look through its camera, so that's embodied.
Yeah.
You read its data, which is hermeneutic,
You talk to its AI assistant, so that's alterity.
and it constantly pings your location in the background, all at once.
It's honestly, no wonder it feels like a phantom limb when we leave it at home. It's essentially a constitutive condition of our existence at this point.
It really is.
But hold on, though. Let me push back on this a bit. Are we maybe giving the hardware a little too much credit here?
How do you mean?
Well, if we say technology is fundamentally changing human essence, isn't it entirely possible that the phone just took what we already are and strapped a rocket to it?
Ah, I see what you're saying.
I mean, humans have been gossiping and seeking validation and organizing in tribes since we lived in caves. Isn't this just a really fast megaphone for ancient human nature?
That is a very instinctual reaction,
Yeah.
and it makes total sense because we like to imagine there is a pure human state hidden beneath all the gadgets.
Right.
But the sources we're exploring, particularly drawing on the French philosopher Bernard Stiegler, completely dismantle that idea.
Really? How so?
Stiegler argues that there is no such thing as a pure human essence that somehow pre-exists technology.
Wait, how is that possible? I mean, biologically, we had to exist as a species before we invented the first tool.
Biologically, perhaps, but not conceptually as the humans we recognize today. Stiegler points out that technology is the very mechanism of human memory and temporality.
Okay, I'm going to need an example for that one.
Think about a piece of flint that an early hominid shaped into a hand axe.
Okay.
That wasn't just a tool to cut meat. It was effectively the first hard drive.
A hard drive.
Yeah, it was an externalization of knowledge. The human put an idea, the concept of a sharp edge, into a physical object that could be passed down to the next generation.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that. So the invention of written language, that's not just a tool to record things. That is a technology that fundamentally altered how the human brain processes time and history.
Exactly. We are a species that only exists through our technological externalizations. We have always been technologically modified.
So what makes right now so different?
What makes today's digital landscape different, and this brings us to things like human enhancement technologies, is the sheer velocity and the biological depth of the mediation.
Right, because it's not just a rock we're holding anymore.
Exactly. We are moving from tools we hold in our hands to tools that rewrite our neural pathways and our cognitive limits. It is structurally redesigning the architecture of how we perceive reality.
Which naturally leads to the ultimate Silicon Valley fantasy, right?
Oh, yeah.
If our gadgets are already mediating our reality this heavily, why not just go all the way? Why not dish the biological hardware entirely? Upload your consciousness, step into the metaverse, exist purely as digital data.
The old dream of escaping the meat suit.
Yes.
This is where Ihde's book, Bodies and Technology, becomes utterly essential. Ihde basically takes a sledgehammer to what philosophers call Cartesian dualism.
Okay, Cartesian dualism. That's the 17th century idea from René Descartes, right? That the mind and the body are two completely separate substances.
Exactly. The idea that you are essentially a ghost driving a meat skeleton.
Right. And the body is just this inconvenient vehicle that gets tired and hungry, while the mind is pure, clean logic.
Yeah, and Silicon Valley loves Cartesian dualism because if the mind is truly separate from the body, then theoretically the mind can be extracted, digitized, and uploaded.
It makes sense on paper.
Sure. But Ihde argues that human perception doesn't work like that at all. He insists that even in the most immersive, supposedly out-of-body experience in cyberspace, there is always an implicit here body anchoring the experience of the abject body over there.
Okay, let's ground that in a physical example because the mechanics of that are just fascinating.
Let's do it.
So, if I put on a highly advanced VR headset and the screen shows me that I am standing on the edge of a skyscraper in a digital city,
Right.
my eyes are telling my brain, hey, we are 100 stories up.
Right.
But if I take a step forward in the physical room and bump my shin on the coffee table, well, the illusion shatters.
Boom. And it shatters because the biological reality always holds veto power over the digital fantasy.
Veto power, I love that.
Think about why people get motion sickness in virtual reality. Your eyes are seeing rapid movement. You're flying a spaceship or riding a digital roller coaster.
Right.
But the vestibular system in your inner ear, the biological fluid that dictates your balance, is telling your brain, we are sitting completely still in a chair.
And that sensory mismatch causes physical nausea.
Exactly. The nausea is the proof that you can't bypass the biological body. The flesh is literally rejecting the dualism.
It's saying, I don't care what the pixels are doing, we are bound to Earth's gravity.
Exactly. You must experience embodiment exactly where you live. Yen specifically critiques techno-fantasies like the movie The Matrix for this exact reason.
Oh, because in The Matrix, you just plug a cable into the back of your neck and your mind vanishes into a simulation.
Right. The fantasy is that the body is left behind entirely. But Yen reminds us that the physical neural processing, the pumping of the blood, the literal firing of synapses, that biological anchor is the only reason the digital experience can be rendered in the first place. You cannot escape the flesh.
Okay, but what happens when the technology actually gets under the skin? Because the sources we're looking at dive deep into human enhancement technologies, or HET.
Yeah, this gets wild.
And specifically, they bring up brain gate and brain-computer interfaces, BCIs.
Yes, this is where the boundary gets incredibly complicated. A BCI involves implanting a microelectrode array directly into the motor cortex of a patient, usually someone who is completely paralyzed.
And it reads the electrical signals of their brain.
Right.
So the patient sits in a room, looks at a computer screen, and just by thinking about moving their arm, the cursor on the screen moves.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like pure telepathy. It looks like the mind has finally achieved pure control over matter, bypassing the physical arms and hands entirely. Doesn't that basically prove the Cartesian dualists right?
It definitely looks that way on the surface.
Yeah.
But applying Ihde's postphenomenological framework reveals the exact opposite.
Wait, really?
Yeah. The patient isn't a floating mind interacting with a computer. The microelectrodes are physically penetrating biological tissue. The brain has to utilize its neuroplasticity to literally form new biological connections with the silicon.
Oh, so the material firing of the brain's synapses is still the unavoidable anchor.
Exactly. The mind isn't floating free inside the computer. The biological brain is just forming a totally new, highly complex, embodied relation with the machine.
So the biological body is actually expanding to include the cursor. Just like my body expands to include my contact lenses, but on a profound neurological level.
Precisely. The flesh remains the absolute foundation. But, this raises a much darker question.
Okay, let's hear it.
If we are inescapably bound to our physical bodies, but technologies like BCIs, neural stimulators, and even genetic editing like CRISPR are surgically integrating with us, what happens to our internal sense of self?
Because we aren't just using tools anymore, we are essentially becoming the tools.
Right. And this is where the source material brings in a heavy but incredibly vital critique from Martin Heidegger.
Let's dive into Heidegger.
So Heidegger defined the human being as Dasein. It translates roughly to being there. But the core characteristic of Dasein is that it is an existential questioner.
An existential questioner, meaning we are the only entity we know of that agonizes over its own existence.
Exactly. We ask, why am I here? What is my purpose? Am I living a good life?
We feel existential dread. We feel friction. We struggle to find meaning.
But look at the trajectory of human enhancement technologies and algorithmically driven environments. What happens when humans become endlessly, perfectly programmable?
Oh, man.
Imagine a near future where your cognition is optimized by a predictive algorithm that prevents you from making errors. Your emotions are perfectly regulated by a neural implant so you never feel depressed or anxious.
Your genetic code is pre-edited to eliminate physical suffering.
Right.
But if you eliminate all the friction, you basically stop asking questions.
Yes, you shift from being an existential questioner, Dasein, to becoming a mere functional component in a larger technological system.
You are no longer navigating the beautiful, tragic mystery of existence. You are just executing technical specifications.
You are optimized.
Wow. Let me throw an analogy at that because the mechanics of this are wild to think about.
Go for it.
Anyone who has played a complex video game knows this feeling. You grind for hours, you struggle, you fail, and finally, you beat the boss.
Best feeling in the world.
Right. The meaning is in the friction. But if you enter a cheat code that gives you infinite health and infinite ammo, you obliterate the boss in 2 seconds. You win. But within 5 minutes, the game is incredibly boring.
Because the lack of struggle eliminates the actual meaning of the game?
Exactly. If an AI perfectly simulates all my ethical judgments for me so I never make a bad choice, and a smart drug regulates my brain chemistry so I'm perpetually content, haven't we essentially used cheat codes on human life?
That is a brilliant way to put it.
We won the game of survival, but the meaning completely dissolves.
And the experts in these sources align perfectly with that exact deduction. They warn that the ultimate consequence of the technologized self is nihilism.
Nihilism.
Yeah, and we have to be precise about what nihilism means here. As Nietzsche pointed out, nihilism isn't just feeling gloomy, it is the literal collapse of value structures.
Right, because if everything can be simulated, optimized, or replaced by a tech upgrade, nothing is sacred anymore.
Exactly. If your empathy can be chemically induced, is it still a virtue?
Oh, that's a tough one.
If your memories can be seamlessly edited, is your history real? When everything is interchangeable, true value vanishes.
So, if the cheat codes ruin the human experience, how do we avoid this slide into optimized nihilism? Because we can't just smash our devices and go back to the woods.
No, the genie is well and truly out of the bottle. We have to figure out how to evolve with them.
Which brings us to the French philosopher Gilbert Simondon and his concept of technological individuation.
Yes. Simondon argued that the goal isn't to blindly dominate technology, nor is it to surrender and let technology dominate us. We must co-individuate.
Co-individuate, meaning we grow together.
Meaning we ensure that technological systems develop in tandem with our psychological and cultural frameworks. We have to stop building systems that only optimize human beings for market data efficiency or screen time metrics or pure productivity.
Right.
The architecture of the technology itself must be designed to leave room for human friction, for questioning, and for meaning-making.
Okay, but how does that actually happen in the real world?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because saying we need to build technology that respects human friction sounds great in a philosophy seminar. But the guys writing the code in Silicon Valley are incentivized by quarterly earnings, not existential philosophy.
Which brings us perfectly to Don Ihde's most provocative, practical demand.
Okay, let's hear it.
Ihde turns his critique directly onto his own profession. He argues that for centuries, philosophers have played what he calls the Hemingway role.
I love this concept, the Hemingway role.
Right. Historically, philosophers have positioned themselves as detached observers. They sit in the Parisian cafe, watching the battle unfold from a safe distance, and then write brilliant, devastating critiques of society after the events have already happened.
Yeah, it's remarkably easy to look like a genius writing a blistering essay about how a social media algorithm destroyed the attention spans of a generation, 10 years after the engineers already built it, deployed it, and bought their yachts.
Exactly. It's totally reactionary. The infrastructure is already poured. The societal damage is done.
So what's the alternative?
So Ihde demands that philosophers must abandon the Hemingway role and move into the R&D role. Research and development. They need to be in the officer's strategy meeting before the troops are ever deployed.
So instead of being a critic who reviews the tech after it launches, you need to be the person sitting in the lab, standing at the whiteboard with the software engineers, asking, should we even build this feature before a single line of code is written?
Yes. And this highlights a crucial distinction in how innovation actually works today. Right now, fields like artificial intelligence or genetic engineering proceed almost exclusively from the standpoint of feasibility.
Instrumental rationality again. Can we do it?
Yes. Is the algorithm technically possible? Can we compress the data? Can we splice the gene? They answer yes, they build it, and only after it's unleashed do they trigger the ethical reflections.
Oh, we built a facial recognition surveillance grid. Maybe we should ask the ethicists what the implications are.
Exactly. And by that point, the infrastructure is totally embedded and impossible to dismantle.
So Ihde's approach demands that we prioritize value rationality at the absolute origin point of design.
Precisely. We need post-phenomenologists deeply embedded in the labs, working alongside the data scientists and the hardware engineers. They need to ensure that the technologies are philosophically engaged from the very start.
Designed to augment human meaning rather than obscure it into an optimized system.
Ex-
It fundamentally suggests that the engineering department and the philosophy department can't be in separate buildings anymore. They have to share a desk.
They absolutely have to.
If we are going to survive our own capacity to invent, the code we write has to have our deepest values baked into its foundation.
It is a profound paradigm shift.
Hmm.
It is acknowledging that the tools we build are quite literally the blueprints for our future selves.
Well, this has been a massive intellectual journey today.
It really has.
We started by completely throwing out the old illusion of gadgets as neutral tools. We recognize them instead as post-phenomenological mediators that actually dictate our reality.
Right.
We grounded ourselves physically against the Silicon Valley techno-fantasies of cyberspace, proving through the biology of our own bodies that the flesh is inescapable.
Oh, absolutely inescapable.
We confronted the very real existential terror of becoming a technologized self, losing our friction, losing our questions, and sliding into a highly optimized nihilism.
A dark path, but a necessary one to examine.
And finally, we explored Don Ihde's rallying cry to physically put philosophers on the front lines of tech R&D.
A literal roadmap for co-evolving with our creations rather than being consumed by them.
So to you, listening to this right now, the next time you pick up your phone to scroll or use a smart home device or read a headline about the latest brain-computer interface, take 1 second and stop. Ask yourself, how is this physical object mediating my reality right now? Is it serving my existence, or am I slowly becoming a functional component in its system?
And I want to leave you with one final lingering thought drawn from the deepest implications of the post-human ideas we unpack today.
Okay, lay it on us.
We talk about the urgent need to put philosophers in the R&D room to guide the technology. But if human enhancement technologies eventually become so deeply integrated that they simply are our new nature, if we truly become a cyborg species that co-evolves seamlessly with its code, at what point does the human R&D philosopher become completely obsolete because the machine itself is designing our next evolutionary step?
Wow, that is exactly the kind of question that keeps you up at night. We started this deep dive talking about the carpenter and the hammer, the clear absolute boundary between the human hand and the passive tool. But when the hammer is actively rebuilding the hand that holds it, maybe the most important skill isn't knowing how to hit the nail, maybe it's knowing when we need to put the hammer down.